Well, hey, everybody, welcome to another episode of Huffer and Friends. This is a podcast that's designed to help you flourish at life and relationships. I'm your host, Huffer, and I'm the lead pastor at the Gathering Christian Church in Naples, Florida. This month, we are zeroing in on the concept of missions and why do churches in America care about people outside of America? Why do they care about people in different countries all around the world? Like, what is the purpose of that? And so as you look to flourish at life and relationships, one of the things we say at the gathering is that your future will surprise you. That when you say yes to Jesus, he's going to get you to care about people and places and things that you never thought you'd care about. He's going to send you to places and people that you never thought you'd be sent to. And so that's what we're kind of zeroing in on this month. You heard from Todd Bussey a couple of weeks last week on the idea of team expansion and what that organization does. And today I'm going to introduce you to another one of our global partners called Uncharted International. And so with me is the president of Uncharted, Ben Stewart. Ben, say hey to everybody and tell them a little about yourself.
Hey, Sai, thanks so much for having me and Uncharted on this podcast, and super happy to be a voice contributing to this. So yeah, I'm coming at you from Denver, Colorado, which is sort of the unofficial hub of where Uncharted on stateside exists. And married my wife Kathy for it'll be 25 years in a few months from now. And we've got two amazing young adult children who are at university, studying awesome things, following Jesus, living life, and they're a lot of fun to hang with. And yeah, just super honored to be here. And I've been with Uncharted for about 9 years now, so happy to explain more about that. But that's the quick snapshot bio.
Awesome. So some questions to follow up that. So I live in Naples, Florida, what we call the Sunshine State. But I was told the other day that Denver actually has more sunshine than any other city in America. Is something like that? Is that right?
That's actually true. We average 300 days of sun a year. And so there's a big misconception when I tell people I live in Colorado. They just think I live in a frozen tundra, but that's actually not true. So it's the best of both worlds. You get sun and warmth down here at Denver, and then you can drive less than 2 hours up in the mountains and be skiing in knee-deep powder. So it's not the worst place.
No kidding, man. I mean, and that's probably why the housing prices are so steep in Denver.
Yes.
Is that right?
That's right. That's
That's
right.
what I've heard.
Everybody's trying to get in here. Yep.
That's crazy.
You
Now, are
got
you a
it.
Broncos fan being in Denver? Are you from there?
The way I would say, I'm not from Denver. I'm a ministry kid, and so I've grown up, lived multiple places, including international. So I would say the Broncos are my AFC team.
Mhm.
One of my many faults, Sai, is I'm actually a Cowboys fan, and
So am I.
I know. Yep, I remember that actually. Yeah. So you know what it's like to be a Cowboys fan. Like you just can't shake it.
Yeah.
Uh,
Nope.
but I
Yeah,
keep
this
going
season
back.
too, they're like I've tried to go in this season. I was like, okay, no hope. It's going to be terrible.
Yeah,
And they give you
yeah,
hope every
they
year.
do.
And then you're like, hey, maybe. And then they just crush it. And I
Yeah,
just can't listen to Stephen
exactly.
A. Smith do his monologues and his laughing. And it just drives me
Yeah,
crazy.
yeah, yeah. It's one of those things that I don't know why I keep going back to that well, but I do. And every year it's just another way that my heart gets broken. But
That's awesome. Well, hey, since we're focusing on missions and you have worked, sounds like I have here, I think, decades. It's been when
hmm
you was ministry kid, you lived overseas for a
hmm
while doing missionary work. And so I want to just pull from your experience as well as like help us understand what Uncharted is and what you all do, and just ask you
hmm
some questions about missions, which is typically the
hmm
term people use to talk about, at least in the States, about ministry work overseas, ministry work in other nations. They put it under the umbrella of that's missions or missionaries. While the church does have one mission, we do have a term called missions that is going and taking the gospel to other countries. So here's this first question. Why should we, like the local church in America, why should we care about missions, about taking the gospel to the nations?
Yeah. Great question, and it does lend itself to dive right in, even to something that you were just getting at. which is I do think that there is this misconception, certainly in the American church here in the West, of that difference of what you were just articulating, the difference between what I would describe the activity of missions versus our identity as people on mission.
Mm.
And I think that that's something that we have lost. I mean, obviously, I'm making broad sweeping statements here, but in general, in the American church, I can't speak to other other parts of the world as strongly. So I'll just keep our scope on the U.S. church. But I do think that we have reduced this understanding of mission to purely an activity that is for kind of a select few people, right? So it's like, oh, well, maybe you get to be a church planter, or you get to get on a plane and go to Timbuktu and, tell people about Jesus, or you get to, go down to the soup kitchen and serve. And that's awesome. And those are all good things. But we equate those activity of missions to that is mission. And I think it begins with this understanding that by nature of being a follower of Jesus, you are on mission. Now, you may not know that, you may not realize it, you may not like it, you may be horrible at it, but it's actually just as core to your identity as a follower of Jesus as it is when we say things like you're a son, you're a daughter, you are forgiven, you are accepted, you are loved. It's also true that you are on mission. And you'll probably hear me say this throughout the course of this podcast because it's a major theme for me personally, but it's also a major theme for Uncharted is, God is a missionary God. From Genesis 3, he initiates this mission of restoration and redemption. And crazily enough, the church, God's people, is the primary means through which that mission is accomplished. So that is a long, circuitous way of answering your question in terms of, why should the American church care about mission and missions? It's more than just good, holy activity to do, to feel better about ourselves or get a tax write-off for our donation or whatever it might be. It's actually a core part of our identity. And regardless of who I am, where I live, my age, my context, my socioeconomic standing, etc., I am just as part of God's mission as the quote unquote missionary who gets sent to a crazy part of the world. So there's a lot more I could ramble on about that, but I would say that's where it begins in terms of answering the question, why should the American church care about missions and mission, is because anybody who is part of God's family, by nature of that, is on mission.
That's so well put, man. And I couldn't agree with you more. There's several things that you said that just like really resonate. I love the activity versus identity. Is that how you identify?
Mm-hmm.
You separate that? That's so true. There's a book called Saturate by Jeff Vanderstelt, I believe is his name.
Okay.
But in it, he talks about when you're baptized into the Father, Son, Holy Spirit, you're baptized into the Son, which gives you identity of servant. He's king, and we're one of his servants. And so when that identity is servant, you serve. That's just what you do, right? When you baptize into the Father, you're now part of a family. Like you belong to the family of God. And so you're a child, you're a daughter, you're adopted into his family. And then when you're baptized into the Holy Spirit, he goes, the Holy Spirit is a sending agent. The Holy Spirit sends you. And so the identity absolutely automatically is that you're a missionary. Every Christian is a missionary. And so what we say a lot is, is that we want to raise up and send out workers into harvest fields. Matthew 9:38. So we're called the gathering because of the harvest. The harvest is the gathering. That's the name of our church. And so when you take it up here and you kind of say we're sending workers to harvest fields. Now your harvest field, what your harvest field is dictates what kind of worker you are and what kind of training you need to do that. Right. That's the mission. Above everything else. Yep. But if your harvest field is your neighborhood that you live in the estates, great. There's a specific way to train you and equip you to do that work. If your harvest field is moving to South Sudan to go plant churches there, So your harvest field dictates now what kind of training and equipping you need to do that kind of work, but it's all the
That's
same
right.
mission. And so
That's right.
man, when I got to hear about Uncharted in your heart, I just so often felt such a heart connection with you all. That's one of the reasons that
Mm,
you guys are one of our partners. So what role? So after kind of talking about kind of theology,
yeah.
missiology, ecclesiology, these are like the studies of the mission of the church
Yeah.
and the role of the church. What role should the local church play in this kind of work?
Yeah. So, again, you used a good term there. I believe every church, every gathering of God's people, whether it's a little house church all the way to the big mega church with multi-campus and everything in between, has a responsibility to identify their missiology.
Hmm.
So that term and the way I would describe that, there's a lot of ways it could be described, but missiology, the way I would describe it is what is the unique, healthy way in which God has equipped your church and is calling your church to engage in his mission of restoration.
Mm.
So I believe that God has, just like he does with us as individuals, I believe that God has uniquely appointed for such a time as this, gather Naples in a unique way to make an impact for his mission of restoration. And I believe he has called each church to do that in ways locally, regionally, and globally. And that's not just like a made up thing. I mean, that's directly coming from the Acts 1:8 thing. It's not like a sequential first focus on this, then eventually get to this, and then maybe someday you'll get to that. But it's an all-encompassing scope and mission of what is the unique way that God has called your church to participate in his mission of restoration?
Hmm.
Why is it that he has put you in Naples at this time? What is it that he's called you to be about as a church in that place? But then also the opportunity and the responsibility to say, what are the ways nationally and globally that God is calling us to contribute to his mission as well? So I think every church has that responsibility of identifying what's the unique way God is calling us into his mission. And
Absolutely.
so at Uncharted, one of the things that we provide on the global side is for the church that says, man, we care a lot about places that are highly resistant to the gospel, places where there's typically a lot of persecution, political unrest, a low saturation of other kingdom oriented ministries and individuals, and provide an opportunity for churches to be a part of kingdom advancement in those particular places. So anyways, I don't know if that starts to answer some of the question.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I want to dig in a little bit for people. So we have a lot of people at the gathering that are new to church, new to faith. And so I want to slow down on Acts 1:8 because it's such an
Great.
important this is the heart. This is typically most missiology and studies and people who are trying to wrestle with their own missiology, their way they think about missions comes back
Yeah.
to Acts 1:8. Where this early church is established, Jesus has died, he's risen again. The book of Acts is about the church. Like what happens after Jesus is in
Yeah.
heaven? What's that new church do? It's called the Acts of the Apostles, is what the actual title is. So the Acts of the
Yeah.
church. And Jesus, before he goes up to heaven in Acts 1, chapter 8, he says, you will be, stay here, and there's going to be power that comes upon you. That's the Holy Spirit. Okay.
Yeah.
When that power comes upon you, you will be my witnesses. Okay. That's my testimoniers. Okay.
Yeah.
In Jerusalem, the city they lived in, Judea and Samaria, that's the region around them, like the states, you could
Yeah.
call it, and then to the ends of the earth, so to all the nations. So at that point, Jesus established for the church, I want you to go here,
Yeah.
near, and far away. Okay, here, near, and far away. He's sending us to those places. Now, there's if you take it like you mentioned, like you can't. He doesn't say go here, reach everybody there, and once you reach everybody, in your city, then you move out into sequential, in a
Right.
sequence.
Sequential.
Yeah,
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
the sequential approach, these concentric circles, right? And then once you reach
Yeah.
everybody in your state, then you go to the nations. We actually
Yeah.
see the early church didn't go
Right.
the way they should, and God kind of forced them. You want to talk a little bit about that and how you see churches wrestle through with that?
Yeah. I do think it's a common way that churches approach engagement with mission is that sequential. Like, first, let us figure out this, and then eventually we'll get there. And side note, and to the listener, side did not prompt me to say what I'm about to say, but I do want to commend you guys as a newer church that right out of the gate you're engaging um, uh, across the board. That you're because I think it's understandable for like practical reasons, but I do think that that's a quote unquote trap that young churches or church plants fall into. And usually it does come down to like, man, we have no money, or we really need to figure out our Sundays, or we need, 100 people first, or whatever very understandable reasons may be listed, is why a lot of young churches and church plants just don't engage nationally or certainly globally. Um, and so I think a lot of it is driven by that is we need to figure out our own little space first before there's a misconception that we don't have the capacity or the energy or the ability to make any sort of impact nationally or certainly globally. And so speaking as someone who's been both a church planter and now is on the other side trying to connect churches to what God's doing globally, man, I would just say like that's a lie. Like there's so many ways that may feel small, may feel insignificant, but are actually incredibly powerful and impactful, that a church of any size at any scope, and that the impact goes well beyond finances. So if finances are the thing that's hanging a person up or hanging a church up from engaging globally, like I hope that they could quickly move past that, because there's so much more than finances in terms of how we can be a part of God's global kingdom. I also think that there's just a lack of understanding from people in our churches. I think it was Barna just a few years ago put out a um, uh, survey on sort of the state of missions in the U.S. church, and one of their stats. I mean, who knows how accurate it actually is, but even if it's even close, it's pretty sobering. They said that 75% of people in evangelical churches in the U.S. today have no idea what the Great Commission is. And so I think there's even just a lack of understanding and education of core passages like this Acts 1:8 passage of, oh, this is what it means to be a part of God's people, is that we're engaging in this mission. I don't have to wait until we have our Sundays figured out. I don't have to wait until I'm a amazingly mature disciple of Jesus who's got all of my theology in line. I don't have to wait until we've saved everybody in our city to then engage nationally and globally. There's an invitation, there's an opportunity, and even a responsibility right now that the Lord is inviting me and has empowered me to do.
Yeah.
And I think that's the core right there. Is we don't do this for Jesus. We don't do
That's
this
right.
for God. We do it with Him,
Yeah.
and that's why
Yeah.
He's given us His Spirit.
Yeah, this is like, it's like Chandler, my daughter, asking in the kitchen. I'm making eggs for breakfast, and she wants to do it with me.
Yeah,
I don't need her help, but I invite her to do it with me, because that's us doing
yeah,
that work together, and that bonds us, that unites us, and this is
right.
God's work. He is doing this
Yep,
work. Isaiah 11:9 says, "The knowledge of the Lord will fill the whole earth as the waters cover the sea." This is His
got it.
great
Yep,
mission, and He invites us to get to be a part of it, to do it with Him
yep,
as
that's right.
our Father and King and our Lord.
Yep.
One of the things, oh man, I lost my train of thought. But I think
Let me go
that's,
back.
yeah, go ahead. Oh no, I
Let
know
me
what it
go
is now.
back. Well, okay. All right.
Before I forget, um,
Yep. Good.
you said the Great Commission. 75% of people don't know the Great Commission. And that is sobering, especially when you think about people who already identify as evangelical Christians. If you're new to
Hmm.
church and you're new to faith and you're new to Christianity totally, I don't expect you to know the Great Commission, right? And so
Right.
what I want to do is I want to teach it to you. So the commission is a mission that's I mean, you're doing it
Hmm.
with God. That's what it means, co-mission. We're
Hmm.
doing it with Him. And there is a commission in each of the gospel accounts. Each of the gospel writers, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, all of them have some form of these words. Hey, I'm alive. Go into the world and make sure everybody knows about it. Right?
Hmm.
Matthew
Yeah, that's
says,
right.
go make disciples of all nations. Mark says,
Yeah,
go preach to the whole world. Luke says, you'll be witnesses in Jerusalem, Judea, and Samaria. John says, as the Father has sent me, I'm sending you. Like, they
yeah,
all basically are saying the same thing. And so at every church, their mission should, like every mission statement of every church should be close to the Great Commission, because it's the
yeah,
mission we are doing with God. Our mission is to
that's
guide
right.
everyone everywhere to the made for more life in Christ. That's straight
That's
from the
right.
Great Commission. We're saying it in a
It's
way that
good.
makes sense to us and to our church. So I want to get that
It's
out
good.
before I forgot. If you're new to faith, new to church, this is the heart of what we do. This is what
Yeah,
drives us. Okay, that's the mission that drives us.
it's
Ben,
really
you said
good.
you want to go back to one other thing before we move on.
Yeah, I mean, just because sometimes this can feel so out of reach, especially for somebody who's a newer follower of Jesus. And I think one of the beautiful things about Acts 1:8 is um, the one of the key words in there, the word witness, actually, I believe helps unlock a level of how personal this is. That it's not like, yes, it's corporate. Yes, it's church, capital C, God's people. But sometimes it's easy to lose sight of like how I as an individual am a key part of this, and how I can contribute to mission. And so just super briefly, because I do think this is where it gets more personal. Um, that word witness has three components to it. And especially in our American Western context, we can often miss the richness and the personalness of that word, where when we hear the word witness, the first component of that word is somebody who knows the truth, who can what we think of as a witness, like you sort of bear witness. So you're standing up in the witness stand and you're like, yeah, I saw that happen, or no, I did not see that happen.
Mm.
And that's usually where we stop when we think of a witness, is like someone who knows the truth. And that is a component of that word, but then it goes deeper than that. It's somebody who actually not just knows the truth, but actually believes it. Like there's a conviction around it. There's a connection to it. And I think we can even wrap our minds around that too, as Western people, is like someone who's passionate about, no, I was there, I saw what happened, or no, this did not happen to that person, and here's, all that sort of stuff. But I think where it gets like way more personal and rich for us as followers of Jesus is the third component of that word. Is to be a witness is somebody who not only knows the truth and believes it, but has been personally transformed by it. And so it's a truth that is not just thought based, or even something that I feel, a ethos about or a passion about. But I can look into my every aspect of my life. I can look at my marriage. I can look at my kids. I can look at how I conduct myself in my business. I can look at how I treat my neighbors, how I respond to the person who cuts me off on Highway 25, like every aspect of my life. And I can see this is how this truth of the gospel has transformed my life. And all of a sudden now it's like, oh, this is super personal. Like what it means to be a witness is I'm just showing people how it's transformed me.
Mm.
And people are seeing how it's transformed me. And so as I am living a transformed life, a life that is continuously being transformed, not in a perfect way, but in an ongoing way, I'm actively participating in God's mission. Um, so anyways, I think that's important because sometimes in a conversation around mission and missions, it can feel so out there and so
Mm-hmm.
philosophical and so like, I don't know, like here's my $20, whatever. But that's where I think that word witness becomes really personal and rich. It's like, oh no, this is me just living a life that's been transformed by the gospel. That's what it means to be a witness.
That was great. I've not heard it done that way, and I'm going to steal that, Ben. That was a really great way to put that. And I wanted to point out to you, like you might feel like this is overwhelming, like our mission to guide everyone everywhere to make more life in
Yeah.
Christ. Like geez, Si, let's, maybe tone it down a bit. The reality is that the mission drives you, and then vision pulls you. Okay. The
Mhm.
mission of the church should be this engine that it's your why that you get up every day. The reason I do this is to guide everyone to the Made for More life. That's what gets me up in the morning. Okay. The vision, what we talk about Made for More, is this picture of the future that ignites passion. It's this picture that pulls us through the ups and downs of living out the mission day in and day out, because we want to reach that picture. And that horizon picture is a horizon in the sense of we're always moving to it. And it should
Yeah,
always pull us, no matter how long the church exists or doesn't. That's the vision we are moving towards. And I just wanted to point out to
that's
you, like,
right.
this global vision is not anything new. And
Hmm.
honestly, it's something that when you have Coca-Cola have a similar vision, right? A Coke within arm's desire of every person. It's
Yeah,
like, and they're doing it. I mean, you go travel
yeah,
overseas and you don't know what to drink. You don't know if the water's safe or not. You can
yeah,
probably
yeah.
find a Coke nearby,
That's
right?
right.
And
Yeah,
that's because they have a vision of getting Coke within arms of desire of everyone for a drink that's not very good for you at all, actually. How, if that's how great their vision is, the gospel of Jesus can't settle for anything less. The
that's
good
right.
news that rescues people from hell on earth and gives them hope and gives them made for more life now, that full life from John 10:10. We're not going to settle for less than Coke, right? Like,
Yeah,
how
yeah.
dare
That's
us
good.
to settle for
Yeah,
less
that's
than
good.
Coke? Okay, so
That's good. Yeah,
what is so so here, we've talked about missiology and theology and just
yeah,
the idea of missions and the mission of the church. What's Uncharted? So you work for
yeah.
Uncharted International. You're the
Hacker.
president
Yeah.
of this organization. What do you all do, and how do you all help the local church fulfill this mission?
Yeah, it's great. So yeah, so very specifically, I'll start at the 30,000 foot view and then move down the funnel quickly. But our vision statement as an organization is we want to help people do brave things to advance God's kingdom. And so I could spend a lot of time unpacking that, but super quickly, the idea of brave things is we want to help people not settle for status quo in their faith.
Hmm.
Like, we want to help people come alive to this reality that they are a significant part of God's mission, to come alive in their faith, to live a courageous faith. Yet doing that for the purpose of advancing God's kingdom, that we believe God's kingdom is on the move. We're not bringing his kingdom into places like Afghanistan or Yemen. It's already there. And we just get to come alongside and help advance it. And I'll circle back to that. So that's our vision. We want to help people do brave things to advance God's kingdom. We say we exist for the courageous Christian engaging in mission. And here's what I mean by that. So there's three main profiles of the courageous Christian that Uncharted exists to serve. The first is national believers who live in really hard places around the world, places that the way we describe it would be less than 2% of the population have access to the good news of Jesus. And depending on your source, there's anywhere from 2.5 to 3.5 billion people, billion with a B, who live in places like that, where 2 to 3% of the population or less have access to the gospel. Um, so we identify this first profile of the courageous Christian is the man or woman who are living in those types of places and have a heart for introducing people to Jesus, making disciples, and planting churches. And so what Uncharted does on the international side is we work exclusively in those types of locations. So there's a lot of places internationally where Uncharted does not work. Not because those are bad places to work, but just because we really have this unique focus on let's go to the places where a lot of people don't know about Jesus yet, and it's highly resistant. And we're not a sending agency in the sense of we don't send long-term missionaries. Again, that's not a bad thing to do. And there's actually a need for that. But our approach is actually, okay, through whom is God already moving in those places? Um, to whom has God already given a vision for disciple making and church planting? And how can we just simply come alongside and help accelerate the work that God's already doing in those places? And so we call those people field partners. And so today, Uncharted has 7 unique locations around the world. And spread across those 7 locations, we have about 120 field partners. So in Afghanistan, it's 30 plus men and women, Afghan believers, who have a call and a burden to help introduce people to Jesus, make disciples, and plant churches. And God's given them unique visions of what that looks like, initiatives of how to do it, and Uncharted's coming alongside and helping accelerate that work. Same thing in Serbia, in Yemen, in Albania, in Azerbaijan, in the Himalayas of Nepal, in Myanmar. And so I can come back and talk about that, but that's what it looks like for us on the international side. That's that profile of the courageous Christian who's living in these hard places, unreached places, engaged in mission. The second profile,
Before we move on, I just want to
yeah,
make
go
sure
for it.
to
Yep.
summarize that, because that's so rich and so good and such a unique approach to missions. That's one of the reasons I was attracted to partnering with you all in this way. One of our other
Yeah.
partners, Team Expansion, they're the typical sending agency that takes someone who wants to move overseas and establish a new work in a new country, and they help that missionary move and do that. You all are different in the sense of you find courageous Christians in those overlooked and unreached places,
Mm-hmm.
less than 2%
Yep.
Christian, and so that means that the majority, like 98% of the people, they don't really in
Yeah,
that people group don't have access to the gospel or repeated opportunities to hear and experience the gospel.
that's
And so
right.
you try to find those courageous Christians, that less than 2%, to be a catapult, a catalyst for them and their heart's desire. And then you said seven
Yep.
countries or 7 areas. Can you go over those real quick again, just to make sure
Yeah.
we got them?
Yeah. So the first is Afghanistan.
Mm-hmm,
Second would be Myanmar in
mm-hmm,
Southeast Asia. A third would be we've got some growing presence in Eastern Europe, former communist Europe, like former Yugoslavia. So the country of Serbia, Albania, and then there's a country just in between Iran and Russia called Azerbaijan. And then we're in the remote Himalayan areas, mostly of Nepal.
mm-hmm.
Um, and then we have our 7th location is to the people of Yemen. And the way I say it that way is because we actually have 2 expressions of work, a very small clandestine underground one within Yemen itself, but then the highest population of Yemeni people, refugees from Yemen, is in Cairo, Egypt. There's about 2.5 million Yemeni refugees in Cairo, Egypt. So we have a pretty robust work within Cairo itself that is focused on Yemeni refugees.
Awesome. Okay. Thank you for
Yeah,
pausing and
great
unpacking
question.
that. So that's the first profile of a courageous Christian.
Yep,
Someone in one of those places, it's a field partner, is what you call them, that's less than
that's right.
2% Christian, and they're trying to reach their country.
That's right.
Okay.
You got it.
So what's
Yep.
the other 2?
The other 2 real quick, and I can come back to the field partners and talk about so what does Uncharted actually do to help
Yeah.
accelerate their work? But really quick, the second one would be churches. And
Hmm.
so churches here in the West, how are we helping churches engaged in mission? So this is why church partnerships is really important to us. It's so much more than a financial contribution or making our network expansive, but it's really about that. It goes back to the conversation we've been having for the last half hour of how can we help churches understand their place in God's mission and live out this courageous call to step into mission. So there's different ways in which we come alongside churches. There's actually a network of mission leaders that we've started called Outpost. An Outpost exists for the person who's in a local church, again, whether that's a church of 25 or a church of 25,000. Outpost exists for the person who is tasked with the responsibility of unleash our church locally and globally into God's mission. So it could be a volunteer, could be a part-time, could be a mixed role, or could all the way to a full-time person who's sort of like the missions pastor, the mission leader at their church. And so every year we host and facilitate retreats for mission leaders from all over the US. And it's a space where they can network, be resourced, learn, grow, find rest, soul care, things of that nature. And a church does not have to be a partner of Uncharted to participate in these outpost gatherings. But it's our way of saying we believe in the local church and we want to help the local church be unleashed into mission. Here's a way in which we can do that. So that's Outpost. And then quickly, the third, and again, we've already talked about this a lot, but it's the individual. It's helping the individual understand, what does it look like for me to live as a courageous Christian engaged in mission? And so, again, conversations like this, other ways in which we're helping individuals come alive to their calling through in God's mission. And so we have, for women, an element of Uncharted is called The Well. And The Well is a space for women specifically to connect relationally, to spend time really hearing from the Lord, but also to be exposed to what is God doing around the world with his mission, and how can I step into it and be connected to it. And then we have something parallel for men called Origin. So these are not like, we're not trying to start women's ministries. We're not trying to start men's ministries. But really what we're trying to do is find specific, unique ways for both men and women to come alive to their role in mission, and to be exposed to it and engage with it. So all of that to say that those are the three profiles: the field partner who are in the international locations, the churches who are engaging through things like Outpost, and then the individual who we're coming alongside and saying, you have a role to play in God's mission as a courageous Christian.
That's awesome. I thank you so much for that. Just to clarify, The Well, what was the other one called for men?
Origin.
Like the origin of something.
But yeah, exactly. Yep.
Okay, awesome.
And
If
those can
there's
both be
someone in our
found on the
church,
Uncharted website.
if there's someone on our church that just like, I'm in, like I want to do that.
Yeah.
How do they get plugged into The Well or to Origin?
Yeah. So if you so our website is unchartedinternational.org. And so if you go there, there's an engage page, and you click on that, and you would see, among other things, links to both Origin and The Well, and different opportunities and ways to engage with it.
Awesome. Thank you for saying that. Okay, so what are
Yeah.
some, and this is where you can talk about the field partners. What are some movements of God that are happening amongst the field partners that you're just super excited about?
Yeah, it's good. Two things come to mind immediately. First of all, I would say, and I hope this is an encouragement to those listening. There's just quick context. When we open our news apps, there's a lot of bleak things being communicated to us.
Yeah.
And the temptation is to think that the narrative is just pretty depressing and dark. And so to answer your question, the first thing I would say is, there's actually another story that's happening. There's another narrative that's being written, and it is the ways in which God's kingdom is on the move in these really tough places. Like what we're seeing happening in Afghanistan right now is just incredible and beautiful. We're seeing, dozens and dozens, if not hundreds and hundreds of people who are fed up with the system that they've been, enslaved to, honestly, and finding real hope in Jesus, through the ordinary but intentional lives being lived by the Christian Afghans around them. And so it's been really sweet to see our field partners find intentional, creative ways to build trust with people who are far from Jesus, introduce them to Jesus, and then start discipling them and planting underground churches. So in Afghanistan, it's things like starting underground schools for women. We have over 400 women who are coming to these underground schools, receiving dignity, receiving education, receiving an opportunity for some sort of future economic hope, but also having an opportunity to meet Jesus. And we're seeing women respond to the Lord um, receive discipleship, go through discipleship, and start these underground churches for women that are springing up all over Afghanistan. So all of that to say, just like the creative approaches that our field partners have. I mean, that's just one brief example
Yeah.
just in Afghanistan, but I could point to all 7 locations, the variety, creative, intentional ways that our field partners are going about the work of introducing Jesus to people.
And
Um,
and
so
what
that's, yeah,
and
go
what
ahead.
Uncharted
Yeah.
does, so you come alongside these field partners that live there, and you say, how can we help? Like, how can we
Yeah.
pour resources, time, money, people, training, whatever you need to make you the best, worker in this harvest
Yeah.
field that you can be? What's your dream for this area? How can we help? And then you partner with them and fund it. You train them or whatever training they need. You encourage them. I mean, you make that person. You are a hero maker. You make them the hero, and you are just pouring resources to them. Correct?
That's right. That's exactly right. And so what we say is we don't have a model, we have relationships. So Uncharted's not coming in saying, hey, here's how you have to go about reaching people. Here's how you have to go about discipling people. We believe they already know the best ways to do it because they are part of their culture.
Hmm.
But what we do say is, hey, here are the 3 things that we believe can add value and help accelerate what God's called you to. And so those 3 things really quick. The first is relationship. We want them to know you're not alone. We want to connect God's people here in the US. So churches like you guys, we want to introduce and connect them to these field partners and help the field partners realize you are not alone. There's a growing number of people in churches across the US who want to know your name, want to see your face, want to hear your story, want to pray for you, want to stand with you. And so that's the first thing that we bring to the table for our field partners is that relationship. But you're right. The second is resources. So every year we work with all 120 of our field partners and ask them basically the question of what does it take resource wise to keep moving the vision and ministry forward? So, because I already used it as an example, the underground school for women, which is led by Afghan believers, they will communicate to us at the beginning of every year, hey, it's going to cost about $15,000 to run this underground school. So then Uncharted will say, all right, we will fund that. Like we will take that issue off the table for you so that you can just focus on the actual ministry. And so at the beginning of the year, we make commitments to all of our field partners at various levels, certainly in healthy ways that don't cause unhealthy dependency. But we know that that help accelerates the work. And so then what Uncharted does is we turn around and go to individual donors, go to church partners like you guys, businesses, individuals, and say, hey, this year we've made a total commitment to our field partners that costs, the total price tag, like in 2025, is $1.5 million. And so we're raising that money year over year, and as it grows, not just to run an organization,
Hmm.
but to make an ongoing kingdom impact in an expansive way through those field partners. So that's the resources. And then the third thing is soul care.
Hmm.
And this is something that we introduced about 4 or 5 years ago, basically asking the question, how can we help these men and women stay in it for the long haul? And so we actually have now on our staff a full-time director of intercession and soul care. So she's literally paid to develop how do we care for these men and women and to pray.
Hmm.
And so 2 quick examples of what that looks like. Just about 2 weeks ago, myself and a small team of people were in Nepal. And Uncharted covered the cost for all 25 of our field partners to travel, some of them 3 days worth of travel through Nepal to come to Kathmandu. We found a safe space for them to gather, a beautiful safe space for them to gather. And we hosted a 4-day retreat where we focus each day on a different element of soul care. So it might be like renewal of your calling, renewal of your love for Jesus, renewal of your relationships, marriages, things like that, renewal of your own just soul and emotions. And so every year over year, we try to offer a soul care retreat, a soul care gathering like that. in the locations that we can access. And so another team literally just 2 days ago got back from doing that in Serbia. And honestly, man, like that's been some of the biggest impact that we've seen in and amongst our field partners is most, I think I can say all, but I'll say most, would say they have nothing like this for them. Like they have no space in their lives to just sit and listen to Jesus, to just sit and soak in his word, to just like to be in community. Most of these people, they don't see each other unless we're bringing them together once a year. So imagine, Si, like if you never had a connection with any other church planter or pastor ever in a given year, unless somebody brought you together. And so the soul care piece has been really significant part of Uncharted, is providing that for our field partners. So those are the three things: the relationship, the resources, and the soul care.
That's so good, man. That's I love the way you break that down. You know, the three profiles of courageous Christians, and then the three ways in which we partner with field partners. It's just it's helpful to hear and to understand and get a better grasp on your guys' work. What if someone's so a lot of people at our church are new to faith. They're new to Jesus, they're new to church, and they are definitely new to this idea of missions, right? These countries they hear about, a lot of times they just hear about them on the news. You know, they don't have that they have not learned about God's heart for the nations yet. This is probably the first time they're hearing a lot of that kind of stuff. What word of encouragement would you give to someone who is new to faith in Jesus and missions?
Yeah. First thing I would say is a word of encouragement would be your place in it matters, and that there is a place for you. So if you're sitting there new to the faith, new to Jesus, first time hearing about some of this stuff, that's what I would say, is that there is a place for you at the table. There's a place for you in God's mission. And you are welcome. And so that I hope is something that a person listening to this takes away is I'm a part of this and I'm invited into it. And not only am I invited into it, I'm needed. I am needed in God's mission. That's the first thing. And the second thing, maybe a little bit more practical, is like find some simple ways to be exposed to God's mission, because it will impact your heart and it will give you a better understanding of what it looks like. One really practical thing that Uncharted provides to that end, every quarter, we just had our last one last week for 2025, but we'll have them again in 2026. We provide an opportunity called From the Field, and it happens in a space like this. It happens in a digital space, and it's an opportunity for people from the comfort of their living room to hear real time, oftentimes live, from one of our field partners. So like the last one, we just featured our soul care gathering in Nepal, and we got to hear from one of our lead field partners, a Nepalese believer, about his story, his ministry, the resistance that he faces in his ministry context, why the soul care gathering was so important. And other times we've had live interviews with our lead field partner from Afghanistan or from Cairo. And so from the comfort and ease of your living room through these From the Fields, you can start to hear stories and put faces to names and understand, oh, this is what God's mission looks like, and then be invited into just very simple, practical ways to be a part of it. So that's just one way that Uncharted and other organizations and churches provide other great things as well. But that's one way that Uncharted is providing. Here's a simple access point into mission, and we call those the From the Field, and those are on our website as well. Yeah,
And they happen. You said once a quarter. Is that right?
that's right.
Okay.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
yeah,
That's great. Thank
yeah.
you so much, man. Thank you. This has been just so rich to get a better understanding for one of our global partners. Again, if you go to the gathering, every dollar given to the gathering, 1% of it goes to Uncharted
Awesome.
International. And so that is our
Yeah.
commitment to them. That's how we partner with them. And so when you give, you are
Mhm.
playing a role in these stories that he's talking about. This
That's right.
underground church in Afghanistan, like you are helping make that happen. This work, these soul care with these Nepalese pastors and
Yeah,
believers in the Himalaya mountains, like you are having a role and you're playing a part in making that happen. So, dude, Ben, thank you so
that's
much
right.
for your time with us, man. It's been
Yeah,
great to get to know you, to get to hear more about Uncharted, and man, it is such a gift to have you doing what you're doing. We really, really believe in it. We're passionate about it, and we're
thank
committed to it.
you, Sai. And it is a joy to be in not only partnership, but growing friendship with you guys. And I would just absolutely affirm what you just said. To the listener who's part of your guys' church, everything I just described literally could not do without you. And so if you do wonder, what is my dollar going towards? I can verify on our end, it's going towards 120 amazing people who love Jesus, who are in really crazy parts of the world, living ordinary but courageous lives for Jesus, and you're helping them reach more people in their communities and in their cities and in their villages. So thank you. It's making an impact.
That's awesome. Well, hey everybody, thanks again for tuning in to another episode of Cy Huffer and Friends. If you are enjoying this and you want to stay connected to it, you can do that on Apple, Spotify, or YouTube. You can follow us along or subscribe on one of those platforms. That's where our episodes drop every Thursday. And just to remind you, as always, before we leave, that you are made for more, so don't settle for anything less. Have a great day.